Good morning. My name is Frank LaRue, and I'm the Assistant Director General of UNESCO for the sector of communication and information. I apologize for not being personally in Korea today, but I must say that it's a big honor for me, and I wanted to do it with this video to be at the inauguration of this wonderful seminar organized by the city of Gwangju. And I thank the mayor for his invitation, as well as the UNESCO National Commission and everyone else who participated in the organizing of this event. This is a very important issue for everyone that deals with communication and human rights. And essentially, the point we always try to make is that when we talk about freedom of expression, we're talking about the right to seek and receive information and the right to disseminate information and ideas and opinions. Now, when you seek information, it is relevant to say that it is information of the present, but it's also information of the past. You see, we believe that the past is always with us. I say that the past is like our shadow, that no matter where we walk, and of course we're always going forward, but we're always projecting our shadow. We're always a result of what has happened in our life. And this is as individuals, as a society, and as peoples of the nation. So Rich Faulkner had an important phrase. He says, the past never dies. And as a matter of fact, the past is never past. And I think this is important to understand. The past is always with us. And in that sense, it is part of the identity of a nation, with whatever that happens that was good or what happens that was bad. And we have to recognize it. So in human rights, the fact that victims of human rights violations have the right to know why those violations occurred, who gave the order, how was it done, who had the strategic decision-making process, all that is known as the right to truth. And it began in the Inter-American human rights system by the Inter-American Human Rights Commission and the court, especially on the case of disappearances. But pretty soon it evolved to all the human rights violations. We have the right to know why things happen. And then it evolved not only from the victims of these violations to the relatives of these violations, but also to the society as a whole. Because every single human right violation affects all the society, not only the victim who is directly implicated or his or her relatives. And this is an important issue to acknowledge. Acknowledging history, historical research, is a fundamental part of the right to truth and a fundamental part of the right to freedom of expression, because we have the right to seek and receive this information. And this is something we're trying to recognize. It also, in moments of transition, everyone says, well, truth should lead to justice and justice to reparation. Yes, but in the principles of impunity of United Nations, approved by the Human Rights Council, in those principles, Professor Diane Orlinker, who drafted the proposal of principles, she says that it is essential to understand that truth also has a liberating effect of its own. Yes, it should lead to justice, but even when it doesn't, truth itself is very powerful, and it's a major step in breaking the wall of impunity. And therefore, truth should always come out, because impunity normally was derived from the fact that people thought that issues would never be known and bad deeds would never be discovered, and those implicated would never be investigated or prosecuted. So the fact just that the information comes out is an initial first step to break this impunity. It generates the consciousness in a society of what went wrong. It generates the embarrassment, which is the moral punishment of those that decided and committed these acts, but it also empowers the victims. Bringing the truth out is a liberating element. And we know that from all victims, from sexual abuse to all human rights violations. So establishing the truth is very important. So with this, we can move then into the question of archives. Archives are the way in which we try to keep together and preserve documentary heritage. That is always important. all archives are important, of all nature and of all topics. From documentary heritage that begins in Mesopotamia with cuneiform writing on stones or on clay bricks, to the different indigenous communities that develop carving trees, carving walls, or painting messages that we have now discovered in caves, all the way to the most recent elements of preserving the music of the period of the Romantic period or the Baroque period of any sector of society or region of the world, but all the way to preserving digital information of today. So we understand that the preservation of archives in whatever form, from the most primitive form to the most digitalized audiovisual form, is all very relevant to document history. But in those archives, we should pay an especial attention to those that have a human rights dimension, those that are the archives of victims and of historical elements that generated tragedies. This is why the archives of the different periods of war and of conflict are so relevant. And this is why they should all come out. This is why we're having this meeting today in Gwangju, which I think it's an important message, an important symbolism. Because it's the preservation of these archives which dignifies the victims, number one, but secondly, it liberates society. I always say that only the peoples of a nation that have the right to seek and evaluate and understand their history will be free to design their future. If we have no history, we have no future, because we're bound to repeat whatever has happened. So I think this is the reason why we also do memorialization, why there's so many monuments to the past, and especially to past victims, or to past heroes sometimes. So I think this is a very relevant message today. We must preserve these archives. We must preserve the documentary heritage that saves the story of these people that have existed and have lived before us, that paved our way to the better future. And this is something of gratitude and dignification for those people. Archives are an essential element of an identity of a nation. So today you're all gathered here to talk about the preservation of archives, but in particular of archives that have a human rights significance, that archives that are the exercise of the right to truth, of archives that should be protective, of archives of facts in history that some people want to deny, or even some states want to deny. History can never be erased, can never be denied. We can discuss history. No one possesses the full truth. History will always be the evolution and understanding of an effective ethical dialogue, which is what we should have. But history will always be there, and we'll always have to deal with history. So preserving these archives and having a dialogue on history around these archives is fundamental for the existence of our nations. And those that deny the past are those that want to repeat the past. And this should never happen. So this is why I congratulate this meeting, because you're having a forward-looking process, which is not always simple, which is not always understood, and not always when people want to talk about human rights or memorializing the past. But this is the right thing to do, and this is the right moment. I congratulate you.